In front of millions of shocked viewers, Jimmy Kimmel looked Donald Trump straight in the eye and publicly ripped open the darkest, most twisted family secret Trump had spent years desperately trying to bury, turning what was supposed to be a friendly late-night interview into the most brutal, savage takedown of Trump's entire family in television history. The studio lights were blazing hot as usual, and the audience was already buzzing when Donald Trump walked out onto Jimmy Kimmel's stage. It was 2025, and this was his second term as president. He flashed that familiar confident grin, waved at the crowd, and dropped into the big leather chair like he owned the place. Jimmy started off easy, cracking a quick joke about the weather in D.C. and asking how the first few months of the new term were going. Trump laughed it off and fired back with his usual swagger, saying things were going great, better than ever, and the country was winning again. The audience clapped along, the way they always do at the beginning of these shows. It felt like just another late-night interview. Then Jimmy leaned forward, his smile fading just a little. The room got quieter without anyone noticing at first. He looked straight at Trump and dropped the question like a bomb. Mr. President, Barack Obama and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett have both claimed that Barron isn't actually Melania's son. They say he's yours and Ivanka's. What do you say to that? The words hit the air and everything stopped. Trump froze. For 3 full seconds, he just sat there, eyes locked on Jimmy. His usual quick comeback didn't come. He gave a tiny shake of his head, almost like he was trying to brush it away. The audience held their breath. You could hear the hum of the studio lights. Jimmy didn't fill the silence. He just waited, eyes steady, letting the question hang there. Trump finally let out a short, rough laugh. That's nonsense, he said, but his voice sounded tighter than normal. Complete nonsense. Jimmy didn't laugh back. Instead, he jumped right in with the first piece of evidence. Well, sir, people have been pointing to the public timeline of Barron's birth. Melania wasn't seen for months before the due date, and then suddenly there's a birth announcement with almost no photos from the hospital. A lot of folks are asking why that doesn't add up. Care to clear it up? Trump's jaw tightened. He shifted in the chair and waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. No comment. I'm not going there, Jimmy. That's ridiculous. The easy banteroo was already gone. The air in the studio felt heavier. Trump's fingers curled tight around the arms of the chair, knuckles turning white. He tried to look calm, but his shoulders had gone stiff. Then Trump leaned back in the chair and shook his head hard. I won't go there, he said, his voice sharp. I'm not talking about that nonsense. He paused for half a second, then repeated it louder, like saying it twice would make it stick. I won't go there, Jimmy. End of story. Jimmy didn't even blink. He stayed, leaned forward, calm as ever, and hit right back. DNA reports are spreading all over the place, sir. People are seeing them online and in private groups. The more you stay silent, the worse it gets. Why not just address it and shut it down? Trump's face started to flush. He gripped the arms of the chair tighter, his knuckles white again. Before he could fire back, Jimmy reached over and pressed a button on the desk. A short audio clip played through the studio speakers. It was a woman's voice, clear and nervous, like someone who used to work inside the White House years ago. I saw it myself, the voice said. Ivanka was holding Barron like he was her own child. The way she looked at him, it wasn't like an older sister. It was different. The clip ended. The studio went dead quiet for a beat. Trump jerked forward in his seat, his face turning bright red. That's fabricated, he shouted, pointing straight at Jimmy. That's a total lie. Somebody paid for that garbage. It's fake news, Jimmy, and you know it. His voice boomed across the stage, louder than anyone expected. A few people in the audience gasped. Trump's eyes were wide with anger now, his usual cool completely gone. He wasn't just denying it anymore. He looked ready to explode. Jimmy stayed steady, his expression unchanged. Sir, that's an insider who worked in your own residence. She's not some random person on the street. Trump slammed his hand on the armrest and switched straight to attack mode. You're un-American, Jimmy. You really are. Stop yapping for Obama's envelope. This is exactly why people don't trust the media. You're pushing lies for ratings and for the other side." The words came out fast and hard, spitting across the space between them. Trump's chest was rising and falling quicker now, like he was fighting to keep control but losing the battle. Jimmy didn't raise his voice. He just looked Trump dead in the eye and answered coolly, "This isn't about politics, Mr. President. This is about the truth for a kid, a 15-year-old boy who deserves to know where he really came from." Trump sat there breathing heavy, his face still flushed, sweat starting to show on his forehead. He stared at Jimmy like he wanted to say a lot more, but the words were stuck somewhere between anger and shock. Jimmy didn't waste any time. He tapped the control on his desk, and a big screen behind them lit up with a document titled DNA Summary Report, Confidential Leak. The key lines were highlighted in red: mismatched blood types, missing hospital records for Melania, and a note saying the probability of Barron being Ivanka's biological son sat at over 94% according to the leaked analysis. Trump's eyes locked on the screen. His face went tight. Before he could even open his mouth, Jimmy spoke calmly. "This report has been circulating among insiders for weeks, sir. Care to comment on these numbers?" Trump shot up halfway out of his chair, pointing straight at Jimmy with a shaking finger. "You're a liar and a traitor," he yelled, his voice cracking with raw anger. "This is fake. Totally fake. You're trying to destroy my family on national television." The shout echoed through the studio. A couple of people in the front row actually jumped. Trump stayed half standing, breathing hard, his face redder than before. Jimmy stayed seated and pressed another button. A video call window popped up on the big screen. An older woman appeared, the former nanny who had worked for the Trump family years ago. She looked nervous but determined. "I was there the night Barron was born," she said quickly. "Melania was not in the delivery room. Ivanka was the one who stayed the whole time. I saw it with my own eyes." She only got those few sentences out before Trump cut her off, slamming his hand on the chair. "She's paid by the Democrats," he roared. "This is a setup. You're bringing liars onto your show to smear me." The nanny's image froze as the feed cut, but the damage was already done. The audience sat in stunned silence. Trump turned back to Jimmy, still fuming. "You're working with Ivanka's enemies. That's what this is. You're all in on it together." Jimmy leaned in a little closer, his voice steady and clear. "You just mentioned Ivanka again, Mr. President, so let's talk about that rumor right now. What's the real story behind your relationship with her and how it connects to Barron?" Trump dropped back into his seat hard, but his hands were visibly shaking on the armrests. He glared at Jimmy, chest heaving, saying nothing for a long moment. The anger was still burning in his eyes, but something else was creeping in too. Real panic starting to show. Then Jimmy nodded toward the screen and pressed another button. A live video call window popped up right next to the DNA report. An older woman with short gray hair appeared, the former nanny who had worked inside the Trump household for several years. She looked straight into the camera, her face serious. "I was there the night Barron was born," she said clearly. "Melania was not in the delivery room at all. Ivanka stayed the entire time. She was the one holding him right after he came out. I saw it with my own eyes. It wasn't Melania acting like the mother that night." She only got those sentences out before Trump lunged forward and cut her off, yelling at the top of his lungs. "She's paid by the Democrats. This is a total setup. You're bringing paid liars onto your show to smear me and my family. Cut the feed. Cut it now." The video call ended abruptly, but the words were already out there, hanging in the air like smoke. The audience sat frozen, eyes wide, phones forgotten in their laps. No one was laughing anymore. Trump turned back to Jimmy, still breathing hard, sweat shining on his forehead. "You're working with Ivanka's enemies," he snarled. "That's what this whole thing is. You're all in bed with the people who hate her and hate me. This is a coordinated attack." Jimmy leaned forward just a little, his voice staying calm and steady, cutting through the noise like a knife. "You just brought up Ivanka again, Mr. President. So let's talk about that rumor right now. What's the real story with you and Ivanka, and how does it connect to Barron? People have been whispering about this for years. Time to clear it up. Trump dropped back down into his chair with a heavy thud. His hands were shaking visibly on the armrests now, fingers clenching and unclenching. He glared at Jimmy with pure fury in his eyes. But he didn't have a quick comeback ready. His chest rose and fell fast, like he was struggling to catch his breath. Jimmy kept his eyes locked on Trump, not giving him any room to breathe. The tension from the last segment was still hanging heavy in the studio, but Jimmy pushed even deeper into personal territory. And what about the rumors that you had an inappropriate relationship with Ivanka? Jimmy asked directly, his voice steady and clear. People have been talking about it for years. What's the truth there? Trump let out a short, bitter laugh, but his eyes betrayed him. There was a flash of real panic in them. That's sick, he snapped, shaking his head hard. You're sick for even asking that, Jimmy. Absolutely disgusting. The words came out sharp, but they didn't land as strong as Trump probably wanted. His usual swagger was cracking. Before Jimmy could follow up, Trump kept talking, trying to regain control. She's my daughter, but the way she looks at Barron... He stopped mid-sentence, his face suddenly going pale. The words hung there unfinished. Trump's mouth clamped shut like he realized too late what he had almost said. Jimmy jumped on it instantly. What did you just say about the way Ivanka looks at Barron? He pressed, leaning forward. Finish that sentence, Mr. President. What do you mean by that? Trump's face drained of color. He sat frozen for a second, realizing the slip. His hands gripped the chair so tight his knuckles turned white again. The studio was dead silent except for the low hum of the cameras. Then Trump exploded with a new threat. One more word about this, he growled, pointing straight at Jimmy, and I sue you and this entire network. I'll bury you in lawsuits. You'll lose everything. His voice was low and dangerous now, the kind of tone that usually made people back off. But Jimmy didn't move an inch. Instead, Jimmy looked him right in the eyes and delivered the final question of the segment. If there's nothing to hide, why don't you agree to a public DNA test right here, right now? We can make it happen tonight. Clear this up once and for all. Trump went completely quiet. He stared at Jimmy, his jaw clenched so hard the muscles stood out. His breathing was heavy, chest rising and falling fast, but no words came out. The panic in his eyes was unmistakable now. He looked like a man cornered with nowhere left to run. Trump had finally reached his breaking point. He slammed both hands on the armrests and shot up from the chair, standing tall and furious in the middle of the stage. His face was flushed deep red, veins bulging on his forehead. He pointed straight at the main camera, his finger shaking with rage. "This is why people hate the media," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the entire studio. "You people lie, you smear, you destroy lives just for ratings. You're disgusting." The shout was so loud that a few audience members flinched. Trump wasn't done. He whipped around to face Jimmy directly, his eyes blazing with anger and something that looked a lot like pain. "You just ruined my family on live TV," he said, his voice cracking as the words came out. "You've destroyed everything. My wife, my kids, my reputation. You've torn it all apart right here in front of the whole country." Jimmy stayed seated, looking up at the furious president with steady eyes. He didn't raise his voice, didn't shout back. He simply answered, "No, Mr. President, you're the one who hid this for 15 years. That's what's destroying your family, not me." The words hit Trump hard. For a second, he looked like he might actually step forward and grab the desk. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Then he turned sharply toward the exit, taking 2 angry steps like he was leaving for good. But he stopped suddenly and spun back around one last time, pointing at Jimmy again. "Barron is my son with Melania," he declared, his voice loud but unsteady. "End of story." It was the first direct statement he had made about it all night, but the way he said it sounded forced, almost desperate. His voice wavered at the end, like he was trying to convince himself more than the millions watching at home. The confidence that usually filled every word was missing. Jimmy leaned forward slightly and delivered the final blow. If that's really true, then prove it. Agree to a public DNA test right here, right now, before you walk off this stage. We can make the arrangements tonight. Clear this up once and for all, in front of everyone. Trump froze in place, his mouth open, then closed. He stared at Jimmy with pure fury mixed with visible panic. 4 long, painful seconds ticked by in complete silence, the longest quiet moment of the entire night. His chest heaved up and down rapidly. Sweat dripped down the side of his face. Everyone in the studio could see his hands trembling at his sides. Then Trump exploded one final time. "I'm done," he roared, his voice hoarse. "I'm walking out." He turned on his heel and stormed toward the edge of the stage. His heavy footsteps pounded against the floor. Loud, angry thuds that echoed through the stunned silence. The President of the United States marched off the set without another word, refusing to answer anything more. The sound of his shoes hitting the ground grew fainter as he disappeared into the wings, but the tension he left behind felt even heavier than before. The audience sat frozen, mouths open, hardly believing what they had just witnessed. Trump kept marching off the stage, his heavy footsteps echoing louder as he disappeared into the wings. The microphone on his jacket was still live, and just before he stepped fully out of range, everyone heard him mutter under his breath, "They'll pay for this. Every single one of them will pay." The words sent a chill through the studio. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. Raw anger mixed with a threat that hung in the air even after he was gone. Jimmy turned slowly toward the main camera, his expression calm and composed, like nothing had just exploded in front of him. He looked straight into the lens and said evenly, "Tonight wasn't about ratings. It wasn't about getting views or making headlines. It was about truth, a truth that's been hidden for too long." Before the audience could even react, the big screen behind Jimmy lit up with a new message. It was a text from the former nanny, the insider witness from earlier. The words appeared in large white letters for everyone to see. "I have more old photos. I'm ready to release them publicly." The studio erupted in loud gasps. Phones started flashing again as people tried to capture the moment. Suddenly, from the backstage area, Trump's voice boomed over the studio speakers, loud and furious. "Shut it down! Shut the whole damn thing down right now!" His shout was raw and desperate, echoing through the room even though he was no longer visible. The audience froze, caught between shock and disbelief. Jimmy didn't panic. He simply gave a small, cold smile toward the camera and spoke with quiet finality. "Mr. President, the door to this studio is still open. If you want to come back and answer these questions honestly, we're right here waiting." The words landed like a final challenge. The lights on stage began to dim slowly. The big screen faded to black. For a few seconds, the only sounds left were a scattered mix of applause from some parts of the audience and low, stunned whispers from others. The tension didn't disappear, it lingered, thick and electric, as the screen went completely dark. What had started as a normal late-night interview had ended in total chaos, and the nation would be talking about it for a very long time. What had started as a normal late-night interview had just turned into one of the most explosive moments in television history. If you want to see what happens next, whether Trump ever came back, what those additional photos showed, or how this scandal rocked the nation, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Don't miss a single update, because this story is far from over. Drop a like if your heart was racing during that final walkout, and tell me in the comments, do you think Trump will ever address the DNA test, or will he keep running from the truth? Thanks for watching. See you in the next chapter.